where do you go from there?
Enjoy it.
That's the problem, is I have no idea where I'm going to start because I was enjoying it that much. I was watching the X Games last night, and they're coming down these half pipes. That's kind of how I feel. Is I'm starting way up here, and now I'm just going to slide down the hill as we go on. It was 2011, and I was sitting in a parking garage in a rental car. And I called my wife, and we were talking, and I said, exact words, so I apologize, "This scares the hell out of me." And she said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "That's how I know I'm going to do it. I'm in. I'm committed." In 2008, my commitments were tested. The real estate market crashed. Did you guys hear about this? Okay. It was not a pleasant time for a lot of us, especially those of us who were in real estate. I was a real estate investor. I sold real estate education. It was a great wave to ride. It was an opportunity where for many years you could be like, that house, and then $40,000 would appear in your pocket. And then everybody wanted to fire their boss and become a real estate investor until 2008 happened. And everything came crashing down. And for me in my life, everything came crashing down. And commitments were tested. I had to take an evaluation, an inventory of my life and how it was going to move forward. Where was my focus going to be? Very distinct moment where I knew it was going to be my family or my business. And both were not in good shape. So I made a commitment and started moving forward. I bounced around to a few different sales floors, didn't fit. It was just a way to try and create some kind of income. And then, of course, I had spent years in real estate investing, speaking on stages to thousands of people about how college education was broken, and you should be an entrepreneur. You should fire your boss and quit your degree. So it made all the sense in the world, post-2008, for me to go work for a university. Okay? Eating crow, I believe, is the term that they use. And so I did. It was a whole line of events that led me there. I was working on a sales floor that I finally felt some comfort with, was doing okay, and then I just felt really impressed to go back to school. And there just happened to be a proprietary university, their global operations center right next to the building that I was working in. I said, I wonder. I found out a good friend of mine worked there, and he got me an interview, and I found out that the job would pay half of what I was making at the sales position that I was currently in. And so from there, again, scared to death. Commitments were tested. But I decided to do it anyway. That's how I knew that's what I should do. I worked there for about a year and a half with some very particular commitments in mind to make sure I wasn't the big wig. I used to make a month what you guys make a year, real estate investor, licking my wounds. It was a reset button, a complete and total reset button. And after a year and a half, my vice president sent me a text message. I'll never forget. It was Saturday morning. Pull it up. From Matt. Says, "Are you renting or do you own your house?" And I responded, "Well, I'm still recovering from financial crisis, so I'm renting." It's an interesting question. What's behind that? And he said, "Well, you're on a short list, as my dad mentioned, of people that are being considered to run the Jack Welch Management Institute, and we're going to fly out there Monday for you to interview." I was like, awesome. Who's Jack Welch? Not my generation, okay? Not my forte either. I was more into Napoleon Hill and Mandino, Dale Carnegie, the entrepreneurial, deep mindset kind of work. But as I consumed winning and straight from the gut on the airplane ride over and in the hotel room, I started to gather a picture of just who this man was. And the heat intensified. And a short time later, I found myself sitting across from him in a boardroom, trying to tell him about how I was going to add value to his legacy, his executive MBA program that he wanted to build to change the way MBA programs are run and distributed and the way that they make an impact on professionals' lives. And then after that was that conversation in the parking garage, telling my wife that I was scared to death and that I knew that I should do it. I made a commitment right then and there. And all that fear, all that anxiety, can anyone guess what happened after I made that total commitment? What happened to that fear? Nothing. It was still there. Okay? That's the first thing I want you to understand today. How many of you think that commitment is important? How many of you ever committed to something? How many of you are better at committing to things for other people than yourself? Okay, about the same amount of hands usually pop up on all of those questions. Commitment is incredibly important, and yet we are naturally wired to sabotage commitment. We're naturally wired to have a mindset that works against us for the purposes of commitment, especially to ourselves. And these were lessons that I had to learn in retrospect. These weren't things that I had some experience and all of a sudden I knew how to handle commitment. It took a lot of bad commitments. It took a lot of poorly managed commitments. It took a lot of pain and trial and error to try and figure out how to actually do this. And I've been a coach and a consultant now for well over a decade in a lot of different areas. And commitment is one of my favorite things to talk about, because without commitment, where are you going to get to? What are you going to create? What on earth do you actually expect to change if you're not committed to something else? If you're not committed to creating something more, into growing and evolving? So I want you to take a second and think about the things that you're trying to commit to in 2018. It was the end of the year, a natural time that we take personal inventory for our lives. So consider that. We're almost to the end of the first month. Most people haven't made it this far. But that doesn't mean that we aren't close enough to consider what it was that we really wanted to dig into. So right now, just take a second and think about what your commitments for 2018 were. See if you can answer a couple questions. One, what is the most important commitment you have in 2018? What is the most important commitment you've made in 2018? Which commitment has had the most reruns in the television series of your life? And it may have been canceled a few times, may have had a couple hits. What are those commitments? I want you to hold on to those when we talk about this, because that's what's going to make this matter. I can give you some great stuff you could post on Facebook and get a lot of likes, and people will be like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, I can't believe you said that. It doesn't matter if we don't understand what we do after today or after this meeting for commitment. Now, there are two primary areas in terms of creating challenges for our commitments. Number one is our brain. Anybody's brain get in their way? Mine all the time. It's really important as we build the proper mindset for commitment, which is critical. Everyone's heard Einstein's definition of insanity. What is it? Thank you. Same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Does anyone know what came after that? It's what is not as much talked about. And that is where Einstein went on to teach us, paraphrasing, that you cannot solve a problem with the same mind that created the problem. So we grab onto this definition of insanity and we go, okay, I'm going to fix the problem. Well, what if the I'm part of that equation, the mindset of the I am, is creating the challenges? Well, there's an inherent challenge in our brain that makes that an uphill battle, and that is that your brain has one mission, one objective, and that is to keep you safe. That's all it wants to do, is keep you safe. You know what the unfortunate part of that, because it sounds nice, keep me safe, nice, warm, comfortable, safe, right? Who would have a problem with that? Anyone that's ever tried to grow would have a problem with that. Anyone that's ever tried to create a commitment to evolve or change in their lives has run into a problem with that, because your brain's definition of safe is predictable. That's safe. That's why comfort zones are not so comfortable. Because they're predictable, but they're not necessarily comfortable. So first thing we're going to want to understand is that we've got a little bit deeper battle than just making a decision, taking the action, and it happens. We've got some biology we're fighting here. So give yourself some credit, because the first thing you're going to want to do before you make any more big commitments is connect with the humanity of your commitments. Connect with the fact that, as Einstein said, the same mindset that created the problem cannot be the mindset that solves the problem, that there are going to be some counterintuitive elements to your journey. There are going to be some natural frustrations to growth. Because your brain's goal, as it's here, it's status quo. Here's its mediocrity is what it's oftentimes referred to. Status quo, there's where you want to get to. And you start going towards it, and the tension on that elastic starts getting tighter and tighter and tighter, and we hang on, and then eventually we're so exhausted because of how stretched out it is, it throws us back into mediocrity, if not a few steps behind it. Consider the times in your life you may have felt your battle against that biology. So understand that going in. I'm going to give you some steps, some ways to be able to stretch that elastic out and find the right spot for you where it's stretched enough that eventually this moves a little closer. And guess what you can do then? Then you can stretch it out a little bit more. And eventually, this moves a little bit closer. But without the correct mindset, without an appreciation for your humanity, this will be the most frustrating, oscillating, back and forth journey of your life. And as a natural progression of the fact that you're still breathing is going to be the maximum reward versus creating your dreams and getting results. So that's one of the first challenges that we have for commitment. The second is one of the greatest gifts that most of us have. Well, we all have it, but most of us have it effortlessly, an amazingly high level, and it's called being a vivid visionary. It is the ability that our brains have as the only creatures on this planet to be what's called metacognitive. Here's my existence. Here's me. I can actually do this and look at me. I can observe my own thoughts. I can create my own best case scenarios. I can see castles that I can build and businesses I can sell and orphanages I can create. All these things. I can create this in my mind like that. It's an amazing gift, and it's one that we all have. We're going to want to find out whether we're using it constructively. We're going to want to find out whether it's, as over 98% of us experience, it has a tendency to be more destructive than constructive. And at that point, it's usually unconsciously impacting our lives. But it is that very ability that's going to make all the difference in what I'm going to teach you today about commitment. It is your ability to see things that haven't happened yet. It's going to be your ability to create rehearsals in your mind that allow you to experience not just the best case scenarios anymore, not just the stereotypical New Year's resolution where just because the calendar says 1/1 enter the year, suddenly you're all of a sudden going to be able to do everything you ever wanted every day. As if the date had that much power. But being a vivid visionary does. Being able to tap into your humanity, tap into your vision is what makes the difference for your ability to make a commitment that will actually turn into a result. And building a platform for which all of your growth, all of your evolution as a human being can occur. With that, I want to share with you the true order of commitment. The true order of commitment is, number one, this one's tricky, make a commitment. Right? That's step one, make a commitment. What does it mean to make a commitment? My favorite term is to decide. Make a decision. Anyone made some decisions lately? Probably this morning. You showed up. Congratulations. To decide means to cut off from. There is a distinct moment, a line in the sand that is made when we decide, when we make a commitment. And that's step number one. Decide, cut off from. What are we cutting off from? Well, here's what we're not cutting off from. We're not cutting off from those feelings. We're not cutting off from that freezing, paralyzing fear I felt in that rental car in that parking garage, thinking that once I decide and make a commitment, all that goes away. When we consider the second element of our commitment, the vivid visionary gift, That's where we get feelings to go away temporarily, because if I had been in that parking garage and I had been talking to my wife and said, I'm going to do this, and suddenly my mind went to how amazing it's going to be when we've got one of the top MBA programs in the country, and I'm receiving accolades from titans in industry, including Jack Welch. It's going to be so amazing. I poured all of my energy into something that hasn't happened yet and started living out the fantasy of how amazing it will be once it happens. That could get rid of the fear and the feelings temporarily. But then it's time to get to work, and guess what comes flooding back with an exponential force? All that fear, all that noise, all that frustration. So when we make a commitment and we decide, we don't get to cut off the feelings. Og talked about them. Scroll 6 in The Greatest Salesman in the World. One of the greatest books ever written. Og goes through this sequence in these 10 scrolls to make an impact on changing our lives. And in number 6 said, I will be master of my emotions. Why? Because they're crazy, is essentially what he writes poetically 50 years ago. The sun rises, the sun sets, the tide advances, the tide recedes. So it is with I. Our emotions are all over the place. How many of you have ever gone to bed feeling awesome and you woke up the next morning and it just didn't feel awesome anymore? And you had no logical explanation for why. That's our humanity we can never lose a connection to. Because the natural response is to go, no, that sucks. Why do I have to feel this way? And then we pour even more energy into the hole that is naturally dug from our humanity. Let's stop doing this as part of our decision. As much as we wish we could get rid of the humanity that we've got, the feelings that hold us back, if we embrace that, that's our battlefield, rather than continually being blindsided by it. Imagine how much more prepared you're going to be to actually do the work, rather than be frustrated with the circumstances. So when you're making this commitment, commit, decide, cut off from the mental anchors, the mental ties, the mindset, but understand that the feelings will still flow. So when I'm going to commit to something, I'm making a mental commitment, and I am preparing for the feelings that are going to happen as I take my mediocrity and I start to stretch on it, and I start to stretch on it. And as much as I wish this wasn't uncomfortable, as much as I wish this felt as amazing as the result will when I eventually get there, as much as I keep looking at my clock wondering when I'm going to get there, I'm going to let go of that. And I'm going to have a mental edge, a mental commitment over the emotional current that's under the surface of our lives. And then eventually, I'm going to trust, have faith, if I could, to have that start to draw closer. And then we get to take a little step forward again and make another commitment and another commitment. So the first step, commit and decide off from. Number 2 is equally complex. After you make the commitment, take action. Take action. And now that we have made the proper commitment, now that we understand our humanity, we know that this action is not going to flow as smoothly as we saw it up here. We know that our commitment to wake up every morning and go to the gym is not going to feel as awesome as it did on Monday when we try to do it again on Tuesday, slip up on it on Wednesday. We can never start going to the gym on Thursday, so we have to wait until Monday to start doing it again. Now we're prepared for the humanity of it. Now we are prepared to let go of the fact that Monday has no magical power. That frustration and feelings of disappointment as we're stretching this band is part of the game. And we start using it, we start owning it, we start embracing it, and that dictates our action. And then eventually, when we can master those two, if the action becomes difficult, revisit your commitment, your decision, your awareness to what this battle really is, your appreciation for your humanity in this battle. Revisit that, then get back into action. And if that falters again, revisit that, and then get back to action. And then eventually step 3 will happen. We don't know when it is, but it's going to be right around the corner. And that is when we finally get the feelings we were going for in the first place. The feelings of accomplishment. The feeling that happens when that new mediocrity has moved up the scale. When we've grown, when we've created new habits, when we've created the success that come from those things, then the feelings come. Number 1, commitment, decide. Take the action. Action falters, revisit your commitment. Action again, action falters, revisit your commitment. Understand the frustration that is the ante to this game, and eventually your payoff is the feeling for that habit. And then you go on to the next one, and the next one. Ever increasing ability through this process to handle increased responsibility. Because the stress, the anxiety that has held us back, that we have tried to push against, and then it almost throws us further back than where we started, simply comes from our responsibilities in life outpacing our ability. Get excited when that happens. It means things are happening. It means you're given the opportunities to stretch and to grow. Because most of the world, I want you to see this, I want you to feel this, is stuck in feelings, being dictated, tossed to and fro by feelings, whether they're willing to admit that on a deep level or not. And then they take action based on those feelings as best they can. How many of you ever heard someone say, when I feel like it, or I'm just not feeling it, or whatever the case is that we've talked ourselves into when we needed to be in the zone, this mysterious zone that always seems to be like whack-a-mole. So we have these feelings, then we take the actions, but the actions are based on the feelings, and then we are going to determine our level of commitment based on how that worked out. That's what's going on. That's what I've been experiencing for years with thousands of clients. So let's break this mold. Let's break this code. Let's stop bathing in our feelings and let the water temperature dictate whether we feel warm and driven and passionate. And let's allow that to come from within. Let's embrace our humanity in this process and make the commitment here rather than let the feelings wash it around. A couple of actions that might support the feelings and that Magic Monday and the New Year's resolutions and everything else, the reruns of our commitments. And then we'll decide whether we're totally committed. Because if you're starting a business, you're trying to deepen the connection in your relationship, you're trying to do things that really matter, this is going to frustrate that all day long. Commitment is the first step. Your brain, keeping you safe and predictable, and then your amazing gift of being a vivid visionary, those are the two things that solidify the proper, true order of commitment. Because what you're going to understand as you're going through this battle right here, that brain that keeps you safe and predictable, is once that mediocre gets pulled into a higher position, a higher level, that you have a brain that's going to sustain that now. You have a brain that is going to support that habit once it's locked in. Word of warning, don't pursue that level with any kind of expiration clock in your mind. If you're looking over your shoulder, trying to figure out when your brain's going to kick in and it's going to turn into a habit, you may not be totally committed. And then you get the opportunity to take on the action. And then eventually, the feelings that you're looking for show up. And that brain sustains you. That's why Og was talking 50 years ago, we're a slave to habits. We're a slave to this place because of that predictable, safe brain. But getting that predictable, safe brain, that Fort Knox of predictability, to move in our direction of progress is hard to do. But it's certainly nice to know that it's worth it. That it then doesn't become a house of cards, and it can be sustained. Then that amazing gift of vivid visionary is exactly how you handle this battle. To decide and commit, and then take these actions that are a matter of your mental decision, regardless of the emotional feelings that you're having. Because one of our gifts to see what's possible is also an opportunity to feel that tide advancing, that tide receding when we're ready to take on our commitments. I made a commitment to wake up every morning, 6 days a week, at 4:30 in the morning and go work out, because it's the only time that I could. So I made this commitment. I decided that I'm going to be a morning person. But that was my decision. I mentally decided. Did I have the feelings of a morning person? No. If you had been around me when my alarm went off at 4:30, I didn't feel like a morning person. But guess what? I took the action. And one of the reasons I was able to take the action is because of this gift of being a vivid visionary. Because when I made that decision and that commitment, I understood the line in the sand. I could feel the commitment, and I started to play out what this was going to feel like. Not how awesome I was going to feel when I came home from the gym and I had powered through my workout for the 6th time that week. I played out what that alarm at 4:30 in the morning was going to feel like. I didn't just intellectualize that it was going to be early, I was going to be tired, and I could explain it to you. I felt it. I felt the pull, the non-logical argument of the magical snooze button. I felt it all right there in my bathroom before I'd set my gym clothes on my counter as my line in the sand to my commitment. So use your humanity to your advantage. Use your gifts to your advantage. When you make this commitment and decide, don't just play out what it's going to feel like when everything goes great, and don't just intellectualize being ready for things going wrong. A lot of people get into the intellectual side, but your gift of being a vivid visionary, you can actually feel it. You can actually feel that pull to grab that donut rather than that healthy food. You can feel that pull to be able to just rationalize out that you got enough done by 3 p.m. Why continue to work? You can feel that pull drawing your mind away from your family and confusing your business and not being able to draw lines in the sand between some of the greatest areas that you're pursuing. You can feel all of that before you even get there. Why? Because it enhances your commitment in your decision. And it has you ready for your humanity. And then you can finally stick to it long enough without any kind of clock, any kind of expiration date of being able to arrive at the habit and actually feel the feelings you were hoping to feel along the way. That is the true order of commitment. That is how we accomplish our dreams. Growth and personal development is not sexy. Mandino talked about it in Scroll 1. He said, this is to prevent failure, not to create success. What is success but a state of mind? We are understanding our humanity in this process so that our commitments can come to life, so that they can be real to us, so that the destructive nature of unmet expectations, we're finally able to have a fair fight. And we're able to find greater clarity around what those commitments should be, how they should be managed. Because those of us swimming in feelings, taking action, and then we're dictating our level of commitment off of all that, it doesn't work that way. I don't get to jump into a relationship, try and build the relationship, and then decide whether I want to be committed to my spouse. That happens first. Same with your business, same with everything that you want to grow and become in this life. Be committed. Be committed. Don't do committed. Be committed. And watch it change your life exponentially when you understand the beauty of your humanity in this process, so that when that movement does happen, you appreciate it. Because that's what draws the grounded nature that allows you to take on the next thing and the next thing and change your life. Thank you.